Okay.
All right. I'm here with my friend David Taylor. Both of
Hi.
us, both of us do quantum healing, and David has started working with kids a lot earlier. And we just kind of wanted to talk about some of the experiences that we've had. Um, my name is Matt Schmidt, and I do quantum healing. I guide people to heal themselves, and just recently started working with kids. David has a longer history of working with kids and has some more experience, and was kind of my inspiration into making this jump. And I think it's a huge shift in kind of where we're heading. And we just kind of want to talk a little bit about the differences and kind of what we're seeing with kids. So David, you want to tell me a little bit about your background, what you started in working with these kids?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. No, it's great to be on here, and it's great to share the same interest in this area. Yeah, I was kind of compelled to look in this area when I read a book, and you may know it. It's called Children's Past Lives by Carol Bowman. And by that time, I was already doing quantum healing sessions on adults. And I was reading this book, and it had all of these interesting episodes and how they were triggered, and even one case, actually a few cases that wound up on Oprah, where the kids were on Oprah. And Oprah brought in these specialists. In one case, the little boy was recanting Civil War scenes from when he was in a prior life, and he had done some sketches. And after the little boy showed his sketches and made his discussion, these experts stood up from the audience, and nobody knew they were there. And they said, "Yep, what he said is absolutely accurate about the layout of the battlefield, about the weapons that were used, and unless he had had specialized training or education about this, there's no way he would know that." And the little boy was 8 years old or something like that. So I thought this was a really compelling area that needed more investigation, right? And so in the book, Carol Bowman's book, she talks about how kids get spontaneously triggered to recall past lives. And the two primary ways are, one, the driving in a car on a trip, and the vibration of the car lulls them into a trance state, and they will say, "Oh, Mom, we used to be married," or, "Hey, I died under this bridge," or something like that. And the parents, would get curious and get into it. The other way was in the bathtub. Draw a hot bath, and the child gets really relaxed, and they get into that kind of dreamy state. I mean, kids are in a dreamy state anyway, a dreamier state, and both of those seemed good ways to access. But on the trips I'd done, my son, who I did it a lot with in the beginning, was not getting triggered automatically by driving in the car. And so I thought I would just put him in a hot bath and basically get him to relax, have him close his eyes, and have him tell me what he saw. And next thing you know, you're getting past life information. It was quite outstanding. I had to scramble and grab my notebook and so on, because in dealing with adults, it's a process. The induction process of getting past the ego mind it takes time, and with kids, that process is just paper thin.
Oh yeah, I've definitely noticed that. Some of the kids that I've worked with too started recounting things in dream state. So they'd wake up, and one of the kids I worked with was like, "It's like, I'm failing science, but I can tell you the two different types of detonators for an atomic bomb and how to build them." He's like, "Why do I know that?" And so,
Wow.
I mean, a vivid detail. He could draw he had all these diagrams and stuff that he drew, and recounted in great detail. And it was just fascinating to see, like, that information isn't out there either. It's not like you go research that. It's not like common knowledge. And so yeah, he was recounting these other lifetimes. So
So they were tapping into information that they wouldn't otherwise normally get, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
and couldn't really
And so,
verify it because it's not like, but it was very detailed and accurate, and more than just you'd be like, "Oh, I dreamt of this." Well, definitely more to it than that.
right. Yeah, no, I've had I've had cases where I've done little tests. You know, they're talking about something and it sounds very technical and very detailed, and I'll change it a little bit, and I'll there's actually a couple of videos on my website, kidsregressions.com, and in one case I was changing it, almost like testing them, like, oh, you've got this wrong, you know, and they were adamant, you know, no, this is the way it is, you know, and it's like, so, you know, it seems more on the real end of the spectrum than on the I'm making this up end of the spectrum, which I think is something that a lot of people feel, especially with kids, that they have such a vivid imagination. Can't be any possible reality within all of this.
Mhm.
Have you come across that in talking to people about, you know, kids' cases?
I have, and just for myself, I needed all that validation in the beginning, and we've gone back to some of these things, very specific places and descriptions of everything, and I mean, a lot of these things weren't written about, but the ones that we could confirm, it's like, yeah, this is spot on. And yeah, they'll correct you if no, it's not like that. It's like this. And it's like, oh, okay, okay, like got it.
Right, right. And so in your experience, were you dealing with, you know, we do past life regression, both of us, but also the higher self? Were you dealing with both aspects or just
Yeah.
one of the
So
two
that's going,
aspects?
yeah, then the higher self, it was like picking up a phone, you know. The last one I did, the kid was sitting there with his eyes open, playing with the blinds, taking the mic off. Are we done yet? And then he'd jump right back into the higher self, and it was the same stuff that'd be coming through in any other
Hmm.
session. But I don't know, you wouldn't even think he was in that state because it was just so, like you said, that veil is so thin. Um,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and what you do is really easy. You empower like people to do this with their own kids, right? I mean, you.
Yeah, yeah. You know, given out the information to a number of people who to do it with their own kids. I mean, there's a little bit of a guide on the website, kidsregressions.com, but to be honest, it's a bit more overkill really than we need. I mean, I think both of us have found out that you know, regressing kids is actually really straightforward, and with the veil being so thin. Um, you know, I think the training that goes into regressing somebody who's an adult and getting past that ego is a lot more involved and a lot more necessary compared to kids. I mean, would you agree or?
Oh yeah, it definitely takes some finesse for sure, especially with some individuals. But yeah, the kids are. I mean, they're in that state already. I mean, they're already in that alpha theta state just in their waking state. So I mean, it's just a
Mhm.
minor shift into that, and they don't have all the things that told them that they can't do this or that they, all the blocks that you accumulate over time. So
Right. And once I find once you give them permission, then they can access that state very, very easily,
mhm.
even without any kind of formality. Like, okay, we're going to go and do a regression now. Instead, you'd just be sitting in a cafe and say, hey, can you get the answer to this? And they just literally close their eyes and access and open their eyes again and tell you. You know, it's quite interesting. You know.
I think so too. I want to talk a little bit about why we would want to do this with kids. Sure, the past life stuff is interesting, but kind of want to talk about why you would want to do this with kids. What do you see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in some cases there was, you know, a child that had like a skin condition, like a rash, you know, and we do the session, and you know, session to us in quantum healing seems so rigid. This is just really laid back, you know.
Yeah,
You just, but the information we accessed was a war scene, and and in a previous life there had been a bomb exploded, and the person died to death, burned to death. And so the child recalled this, and afterwards the rash, you know, and some people believe that the rash can be present because of a prior life that where they burned to death,
yeah,
and it can be like a shadow of that life or a recalled memory or something that's in the cells. But after seeing that scene and releasing that scene, then you know the rash went away. In this case, um, you know, the rash would show up in the summer, especially when they got hot and sweaty. So by accessing that past life and releasing that, and they, I I can't speak for them, but it felt like they understood that there was a separation between that life and this life,
Oh yeah.
which I think is one of the issues with kids. They slip into other, they can easily slip between lives. And so once
Mhm.
that separation was there, I felt that the healing facilitated much more easily.
Oh,
So it was the rash was gone, just the heat rash, you
yeah.
know. I mean, they would get infected, and the mom had to put, steroids on it, which you don't want to be putting that on, a 7-year-old kid, you know. And so this is an easy way, much easier, much more permanent than putting steroids on for years and years, steroid cream, you know. So, how about you? How have you come across similar cases where it can help the
Oh,
parents
yeah.
and the child?
And a lot of times, well, what I find even working with adults, we end up going back to these childhood times that they haven't healed
Mhm.
from. So if something happened when you were 5, it's easier to deal with when you're still a kid. It doesn't turn into this debilitating condition that, dictates 90% of your life or the first 40 years of your life. You address it early on. Like I even take people back to even in the womb when they're connected to their mother and taking on their emotions from their mother at that stage. So if you can carry that trauma that early, you can heal it that much earlier as a kid. Um, I see a lot of these patterns really dictate most of a person's life. Like some of these early things, and it's not any fault of the parents. Sometimes it's just like they think they're doing the best, but that stuff still occurs, and that soul still takes that on. In terms of past life, I have seen stuff carry over. I call it like a residue. It's like your mind remembers that trauma, didn't get a chance to deal with it or process it, and it recreates it, and it recreates it in the body. So this is on an unconscious level, but when we go back, it's very real.
Hmm.
These irrational fears almost always go back to a past life, a past existence. And I'll be honest, I didn't even believe in past lives before I started doing this.
Hmm.
But I've taken people through thousands of them now, and everyone's telling me
Hmm.
the same thing, how they, of that process. And then when the physical whatever goes away, or the fears of any of the emotional stuff goes away, um, yeah, even with kids having like night terrors, or sometimes those are just memories that they need to process and deal with, or even that separation like we talked about. So I think
Hmm.
that's really, really important to do that. And um, I see some of the kids struggling, the ones coming in that are like really sensitive and stuff like that, to all the stuff going on in the world. They're picking up on what's going on with school, what mom and dad are feeling. And so just being able to balance that out in their own life and be at peace with that. So they can actually use it as a gift, not have that be debilitating. So I think
Hmm.
that's a very powerful shift. And um, a lot of adults don't feel that way, or they're not that way, so they don't know how to deal with a kid that is like
Hmm.
that. My
Hmm.
daughter came home
Hmm.
crying because she saw another kid get hit at school. I'm like, what? But that was hard for me because I didn't understand what was happening. But she was taking on the emotion of the kid who was getting hit, the kid who hit the kid, and taking that on
Hmm.
as hers. So
Hmm.
just being able for that child to figure out how to handle their emotions and process things, I think is really useful. I think that's useful at any age. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, I really agree. And I think that, even myself, I agree that I didn't believe in past lives much before either. But once I got into this and I found the value of it, then as my kids started talking about imaginary people in the room and so on, I found myself correcting myself from my prior behavior, which was, kind of to laugh at them, and instead validating it.
mm,
And so once you validate it, then that's also a weight off the kid's mind, especially really young kids, like under the age of 8, where their veil is so thin. I mean, after the age of 8, especially after the age of 12, the ego starts getting fully developed. And even I've had little kids say, hey, how come the visions I see when I'm 12 years old aren't as clear as the ones I saw when I was 7, And I mean, I feel I can't, be there, but I imagine that the veil is just a little bit thicker, even for that 12-year-old than a 7-year-old.
mhm. And that's even shown in terms of neuroscience, how our brain patterns change, where we're not shifting away from that state and moving more into alpha beta brainwave state. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
consistent. And that
Hmm.
shift starts to happen around 7 from what I know about
Yeah.
neuroscience and stuff. So
Yeah. 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 So I feel it's like the opposite, almost the opposite of what I thought before was that doing something like past life regression or hypnosis or quantum healing on a child, you know, could maybe not be optimal for them, could hurt them. There's this fear that it could hurt them, but I found the opposite to be true. I found that it's a release of like you said, a residue, a shadow of a prior life. It's a validation of visions or that they may have that we can't see because their veil is so thin. And also I find it's a deeper level of understanding. So one little kid liked mangoes and then found out that in a prior life he was so poor he went to the village market and couldn't steal any meat because it was so closely guarded, but he could steal vegetables and fruit because that wasn't such high value. And out of all the things that he loved to steal, mango was his favorite thing to steal. So you get these little insights into why your kids like are the way they are. The sports they like, the food they like, and accessing that in a past life. I don't know. It's just such a gem of information. I mean, it just makes them so adorable in this human vessel that they're in right now, to imagine that they're taking that from a past life and and enjoying it in this life.
I like the where kids are at too, because we don't even know the implications of healing some of this stuff. It may seem even like small, but um, I've worked with people and they've had these things for 20 years, 30 years, and we go back and if you could have addressed it at that point, like how markedly different that life would have been. Those things don't become huge things that there's enough roadblocks in life, enough hurdles, and giving them like the best quality of life to experience things and still like you can get the gentle lessons, you can still learn. It's not taking away their lessons by any means, but
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that, and I agree that you can actually fine tune their purpose in life by accessing past life information. And sometimes with a kid, I read somewhere that if you ask a child, like by age 2 or 3, why they incarnated on Earth, why did they come to Earth, why did they come into this body, they will tell you. But I think actually now that I know quantum healing, you can access that information, much later. But it's very easy to access it when they're a little kid. So you can find out, oh, you were in India and you used to play soccer in bare feet with a raggedy old ball, and now your passion is, to do the best you can playing soccer, and you've got, you love soccer and you want to try and be a professional, and so relating that to a prior life where they, it just seems so precious, because in that prior life they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the wherewithal to advance very far on that pathway. They did as much as they could, but now in the modern society we live in, they can access nicer cleats, nicer soccer ball. You got astroturf on the field, and so they can possibly like progress farther down that path that they started out on before. And so by unlocking that passion at an early age, you can really then encourage them and support them. And I mean, I agree that some parents think that kids should try a lot of things. But I think that once you find out that passion, you don't need to try a lot of things. You don't need to put them into different courses and classes and try this, Johnny, try that, and so on. See what you like. No, it's just like, I mean, you might add things in that enhance what they're on their path for, but you can really drill down into it.
There's
I think
I
that's
know
really
I know
valuable.
I know in our kind of community of people that do this work, like working with kids is kind of a taboo for a while. There was like a lot of fear, and well, if you took a kid to a past life and they saw something like it was like something scary, and there was a lot of fear around that. But I've noticed in my own sessions, like I tell everyone, like you're never given more than you can handle. You may not be what you want, but you always get what you need. And
Hmm.
it doesn't stop just because you're a kid. Like the same thing we're relying on to do this work is also guiding each of these kids' sessions. So
Right.
I don't think that fear is um, really an issue, because a lot of times these kids are already dealing with these or having like memories of these incidences, and that's the point of doing this, is to get that understanding like we talked about.
Yeah, I feel it gives them perspective. Like I said, we're saying earlier about that separation. Oh, that was a past life where I got bombed, and now I'm in a different life, so I don't need to remember being burned, so I don't need to have this rash anymore. So that separation, I think, can help them out, and so accessing that information doesn't mean drawing it into this life. I think is actually the opposite. I think it helps to show them that, hey, that was something separate, and this is something that you're doing now in this physical body that's different.
Definitely. What else have you noticed different with these kids sessions, compared to like working with an adult? I mean, other than like how easy it is to get into this state and how fluid that is.
I would have to say they they they're they like to draw, which is
Oh,
different
yeah.
from adults, because kids draw a lot. So immediately after a session, the best thing to do is put like markers, crayons, pencils, whatever, a bunch of paper, and start drawing what you saw, and also you can get out the video camera if they saw like somebody doing something a certain way.
Oh,
I mean, kids aren't inhibited like adults, so they can actually play it out for you. So you can take a little video clip, and so now you've got this video clip of just like the little boy who was on Oprah who drew the Civil War scene that was validated by the experts. So this kind of, and that's where I learned it from, doing the drawing, getting
oh,
them to
that's
do the
clever.
drawing. Yeah. How about yourself?
I was going there with the drawing. Like I didn't know if you're going to mention that, but I didn't even think about the video. Like that's great, if they want to act it out or whatever. But
Mhm.
yeah, my daughter has like pictures all over the house of things that came through and her stuff.
Mm.
So um, just pretty cool drawing. So and they don't look anything like her other ones. Like she drew like her spirit guide that looks like this, and it's like nothing like anything else she's ever drawn. And she just like I'm
Yeah.
inspired, and she's just drawn like crazy. Just gotta get it out. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because then you've got like actually something that you got a piece of paper that you can work with that you can keep, and it makes it really interesting. So yeah,
awesome.
I think it's a great tool. I mean, I think it's a great tool that, and I understand, like, I think some parents, and I know through my friends, even though we're close friends, they don't feel comfortable about having a practitioner, quantum healing practitioner, spend time with their kid, and of course they're welcome to be present. It's not about privacy or anything, but in terms of the training that we have. So I just tell them, look, you can do this yourself. It's really easy. Spend some time with your child, get to know them on a deeper level, and learn about their purpose and their path and what they went through in prior lives early on, so you can optimize this lifetime for them.
That's great. I think I love how you said that too, because it is such a bonding thing. I think a lot of times we come in with different roles in these lifetimes, and they can see that relationship like, oh, I feel this way towards you because, well, you were my kid in a different lifetime and I was your mom. And they see that role reversal, and they see why they have that dynamic. And it's a lot of insight for both parties, and for the rest of the family members. It makes relationships make a lot of sense when you explore those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, like when my son was 8, we'd probably done about 4 regressions by that time. He would ask me after dinner, "Hey, can we do another regression tonight?" Because and it's kind of interesting because kids are easier than adults, so there's less time spent getting to the past life information, and so literally I think the time range was 30 to 45 minutes, but in that of the session, like the session. And so in that 30 to 45 minutes, we would access all these past lives. So if you start doing this with your child, and especially it's really great if they're under 8, then you can access all this really cool information. Information about societies planets that have different physical characteristics, and to know that your child was on that planet, or in that society. It's just so cool. you know I I think it's a great fun thing that you can just do with your kids, you know, and Northern Hemisphere, it's the winter right now, you know. I mean, some people like winter sports. You can go out, you watch a movie, you can do karaoke, play board games, or after dinner, you can do a past life regression with your kids, spend an hour, get some drawings done afterwards, and have a real fun time of it, you know?
Yeah. Or time travel. Yeah, we can go back and
Just
so,
let it go wherever it goes, right?
yeah. In these ones, and this is kind of for some other people that do this work, do you access their higher selves or that higher part of themselves ever in these sessions?
Yeah, so the ones I've done, I haven't the ones under 12, I haven't accessed the higher self. The ones that are in teenagers, I have been able to, I was able to access the higher self. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, in
How about yourself?
the last one I did was 9. Higher self was just right there. It wasn't even a stretch. It just kind of just started talking, but um
Yeah.
and yeah, so you can add that part. Like all I did was ask to speak to his higher self, and sure enough, it's the same information that I get in all the other sessions. That same voice, and it actually sounded like more of an adult voice, like coming through, and it was
Really?
with the same level of advice that anyone else would get. So
Well, that's really cool. Like, I'm so glad that, you know, we can have this discussion because, you know, the idea that other people can start doing this and refine the techniques and access more information like the higher self, you know, hopefully over time people can adopt this and just, you know, it's just something that you do, you know?
yeah, awesome. I think that's pretty good. I think we covered a lot of stuff, and yeah, thanks David
Yeah.
for agreeing to do this. And yeah, reach
Yeah.
out to David. Do you want to tell him the website again? It's Kid Regression or
Yeah.
Kid.
I'm at www.kidsregressions.com. Yeah. And how about you, Matt? How do people get in touch with you?
www.mattschmidtqh.com. So
Okay.
pretty self-explanatory, but
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for, you
yeah.
know, organizing this and setting it up and being the host and running the recording. So I appreciate it.
All right, thanks David.
Okay. Have a great evening. Bye for
Bye.
now.